At the Hundred Flowers Banquet, Xiao Yunheng's childhood sweetheart barged in and slapped me in front of everyone. And you call yourself a young lady from a prestigious family. You just eagerly picked up what I didn't want. The girl was stubborn yet proud, her eyes red, but she was looking at Xiao Yunheng, who was shielding me. He said coldly, "Junju, please have some self-respect." Everyone thought this was the classic drama of an old flame losing to a new love. Only I knew that while he immediately shielded me tightly, he also blocked any opening for me to slap back. When Xiao Yunheng said those words, Xia Wenying's eyes turned completely red. The chin that had been stubbornly raised now looked utterly pitiful. Indeed pitiful, if I hadn't just been slapped in public and wasn't still having ringing in my ears. Ji Wenying pointed at me behind him, tears rolling down like pearls. "Xiao Yunheng, are you really going to cut ties with me for such a shameless woman?" Faintly, I seemed to hear the snickers of other noble ladies around when she said this. How embarrassing, I told you. Does a country bumpkin really think she can steal someone from the Junju and marry into the general's manor? Who in the capital doesn't know about the history between Minging Junju and General Xiao? Yet she insists on overestimating herself and competing with the Junju? Who doesn't know that every time the princess says she is cutting ties with General Xiao, it always ends with General Xiao apologizing and them making up? They were a loving couple, and she insisted on butting in. She deserved to be humiliated. That is right, even before I came to the capital, Xiao Yunheng had already been entangled in endless disputes with that Mingning princess, who was most favored by his majesty. It was probably just a spoiled princess finding the cold-faced general an eyesore, so she provoked and made things difficult for him multiple times. Yet each time she was saved by the cold-faced general, so in the end it inevitably turned into mutual affection. But the princess was willful and arrogant, while the general was composed and reserved. Two people with such incompatible personalities being together naturally led to constant conflicts and quarrels. Countless times, the two parted on bad terms, until the last time, in her anger, Xia Wenying tore apart the sachet that Xiao Yunheng's late mother had sewn for him. Only then did Xiao Yunheng truly become furious and never back down again. But in the past, Xiao Yunheng would always compromise in the end. Two others. Their breakup seemed like nothing more than a dramatic scene between two lovesick fools. Sooner or later they would make up again. But Xia Wenying waited and waited, only to receive news that Xiao Yunheng had brought a woman to the Hundred Flowers Banquet. That woman was me. Looking at it this way, I must have overestimated myself and brought humiliation upon myself. So I deserved to be mocked by others, watched coldly as a joke. But I touched my left cheek, feeling the dense, stinging pain. I vaguely remember the one who nodded and agreed to the emperor's matchmaking, the one who approached first, was clearly Xiao Yunheng, a noble lady, slapped in public at the Hundred Flowers Banquet. No matter how you look at it, it is still an unbearable humiliation. If I truly had any backbone left, I should slap her back. I wanted to do just that. But when I looked up, Xiao Yunheng was blocking my way. Someone sighed. After all, an old flame can't compare to a new love. Only I knew that while he immediately shielded me protectively, he also blocked any opening for me to slap back. I smiled bitterly, but my heart had gone completely cold. Xiao Yunheng, is this what you called being devoted only to me, with no one else? Yes, this wasn't the first time Xiao Yunheng and I had met. If his mere 2 years with that Minging County princess Xia Wenying could be called a bickering pair of childhood sweethearts, then what should our years of knowing each other since youth and being together count as? My mother was the emperor's elder sister. Back then, to pave the way for him, she married my father alone. From then on, she went far to the border and never returned to the capital her whole life. That was when I met Xiao Yunheng, at that time. He was only 14, disliked by his stepmother, so he simply went and cried to his father. Next thing he knew, he was sent to the military camp at the border for training. An unfavored son of a noble family stationed at the border thousands of miles from the capital. Naturally, he couldn't avoid being bullied and ostracized. The worst time, those people stole the only keepsake left by his late mother, that sachet personally sewn by Madame Xiao. He charged at them like a madman, ignoring the fists and kicks landing on his body, but he still couldn't get it back. Those people laughed and called him trash, a stray dog with no mother to teach him. It was my mother who scolded them in time and rescued him. She even shed tears when taking him to see the doctor. Your mother was once an old friend of mine who would have thought she would pass away so early. She was far away at the border and could only know so little. Seeing the son of an old friend again, she couldn't help but feel emotional. Xiao Yunheng's eyes reddened too, and I picked up the sachet with its broken threads with my own hands and said to him with a smile, "Brother Yunheng, don't cry. Nian Qing is really good at needlework. I'll definitely mend it for you so well that you won't be able to tell at all." But why did he cry even more? Still innocent and naive, I scratched my head. Those troublemaking soldiers were punished by my father. According to military law, Xiao Yunheng was kept by his side, slowly tempered and trained. When I saw him again, he no longer had that gloomy look from before. His eyes now held more determination and composure. Mother called me over to her, pointing at him with her round fan. She said to me with a smile, "Nian Qing, from now on he is your father's adopted son. You really have to call him brother now." This was originally just the adults teasing, but Xiao Yunheng's face turned red with awkwardness. I tilted my head and secretly pulled him away while the adults were discussing serious matters. Nian Qing. He was 2 years older than me and looked like he wanted to say something, but I shushed him. Then quietly took out something I had hidden for a long time from behind my back. "Look, did I embroider it well?" I said to him happily. "I spent so long mending this. Isn't it exactly the same as before? This way, won't Yunheng Gege stop crying?" Mother, said Xiao Yunheng, was very pitiful. Lost his mother, then got a stepfather. At such a young age, he was sent to this bitter, cold frontier. If she, an old acquaintance of Xiao Yunheng's mother, didn't help out a bit, who could guarantee how long he would last? I was very obedient. So when mending this sachet, I put in a lot of effort, and my hands got poked with several holes. I thought Xiao Yunheng would be happy, but he just stared fixedly at that sachet, and my injured hands. He cried. Life at the frontier was rough yet peaceful. Xiao Yunheng really became a young general who rode into battle to kill enemies. Every time he came back, he always had something in his hands to give me. Sometimes a jade ring plundered from the barbarians, sometimes wildflowers picked on the way back. Then he would coax me. "Don't cry, don't cry. Aren't I perfectly fine? With Nian Qing waiting for me, I couldn't bear to die." But I still couldn't help crying because I was really scared. When I was young, barbarians invaded, and father rode off on horseback just like him. For 3 days and nights, mother never closed her eyes, and I was confused and anxious. What we waited for was father covered in blood. The doctor said if it had been any later, father would never have woken up again. I will never forget father's wounds all over his body, and I am even more afraid that Xiao Yunheng will follow in father's footsteps. So every time he led troops away, I was on edge. Mother teased me when he and I met. I am afraid I won't be able to keep this daughter of mine. Xiao Yunheng and I exchanged a glance. Both our faces turned red, but faster than things falling naturally into place was the imperial decree from the capital. Xiao Yunheng had achieved remarkable feats at the border over these years. Lord Xiao finally remembered this eldest son of his, so he went before the emperor to request rewards for him. It was also requesting rewards for the Xiao family. And so Xiao Yunheng returned to the capital by imperial decree. Before leaving, he looked at me and waved with a smile. "Nian Qing, wait for me to return." This wait lasted 2 years. Yet I went to the capital first, for no other reason. I had grown up after all. It was time to marry. Me emperor uncle felt guilty toward mother, so he wrote a letter, hoping mother could bring me back to the capital. 1, to find a husband for me, 2, to let imperial grandmother see her daughter. But as fate would have it, unrest broke out at the border. Mother refused to leave father's side. So she had no choice but to let me set off first. That was when Xiao Yunheng and I crossed paths again. I didn't know he had just had a fight with Xia Wenying, all because he was late to his appointment with Xia Wenying for some reason. The girl threw a fit and tore that sachet to shreds. Excuses, all excuses. Who knows if you were secretly meeting some other woman behind my back? This sachet doesn't look like something your mother gave you either. It is probably some token from a vixen who has been carrying on with you in secret, isn't it? Is it that girl from beyond the border you just mentioned? Before she could finish, Xiao Yunheng shouted at her and shoved her. She fell to the ground, looking over in disbelief. But the man who had never truly gotten angry at her didn't even spare her a glance. Instead, he lowered his head, eyes reddened, picking up the torn pieces of the sachet. The girl instantly stomped her feet and burst into tears. Xiao Yunheng, how dare you treat me like this? You'd better not regret this. She turned and ran off, just waiting for Xiao Yunheng to chase after her, coax her properly, say some sweet words, and only then would she reluctantly forgive him. But Xiao Yunheng didn't chase after her. When I arrived, this was exactly the scene I witnessed. A slender hand passed him the last piece of fabric, and he looked up. The girl's eyes were bright and gentle, just like back at the border. Yunheng Gege, how did you tear it again? I had just arrived and knew nothing of his entanglements with another woman. I was just happy that after 2 years apart, we could finally meet again. Naturally, I didn't notice the fleeting panic in Xiao Yunheng's eyes as he trembled slightly and spoke. Nian Qing. My imperial uncle and imperial grandmother both doted on me greatly, especially imperial grandmother when she saw me. She pulled me into her arms, her heart aching as she kept saying how I must have suffered. As for Xiao Yunheng, none of them hid from him that the purpose of my return this time was to choose a husband and marry. Not to mention, Mother had also hinted at my past with Xiao Yunheng in her letters. Without a doubt, Xiao Yunheng was the son-in-law Mother favored. She didn't know that Xiao Yunheng had already gotten entangled with another woman in the capital, just like I didn't know why Xiao Yunheng had paused and didn't seem that happy. Me imperial uncle, who saw through everything, gave him a meaningful look. We have heard that Princess Minging has displeased you these days. This girl has been spoiled and acts a bit boldly. If you truly hold any grievances, feel free to tell us, and we will absolutely not show favoritism. Princess Minging. I was confused. Was she the one who tore up Xiao Yunheng's mother's sachet? Xiao Yunheng was stunned for a moment, then knelt down and said, "This subject has been at odds with Princess Minging for a long time. What she has done now is truly too much. This subject, thanks your majesty for upholding justice." This meant severing all ties with her completely. As it happened, this was exactly the answer the emperor wanted. One was a princess he had watched grow up, the other was a niece he always felt he owed. He certainly didn't want Xiao Yunheng wavering between them, nor did he want discord in the royal family. Thus, Princess Minging was confined for 3 months. She only came out today. She didn't get the apology she was waiting for from Xiao Yunheng. Instead, she got the news that he had been going in and out with a woman these past few months, and even attended the Hundred Flowers Banquet together, when had a princess born of noble blood ever suffered such grievances. She stormed in angrily and slapped me in front of everyone. And you call yourself a lady from a noble family. You eagerly picked up what this lady discarded. One incident after another led to the current situation. I was immediately shielded behind Xiao Yunheng, his voice carrying displeasure. Nian Qing and I have always treated each other with propriety. Princess, watch your words. But Xia Wenying seemed stung, growing even angrier. Nian Qing, so you are already calling her so intimately. You are still siding with her. She clearly knows about you and me, yet she still uses His Majesty's influence and her mother who married far away to force you into marrying her. If that is not shameless, then what is? She is just a country bumpkin from the borderlands. What is so great about her? Why do all of you side with her? Whinnying. Xiao Yunheng's sharp voice startled everyone present. He was truly angry. He would surely be furious, because he had truly been stationed at the border. He knew how cold the winds at the border were. knew how high the corpses of those who died fighting the barbarians were piled. And at the same time they were far away in the capital, living it up with songs and dances, drowning in luxury. So what gave them the right to casually dismiss him as just some country bumpkin who went to the border? From beginning to end, it was you who found me displeasing, provoking me time and again. I've endured repeatedly, already showing more than enough tolerance. How could there be any talk of private affairs between us? He spoke word by word in front of Xiao Yunheng's pale face. Nianqing and I grew up together as childhood sweethearts. She came to the capital, so protecting her is only natural. Not to mention General Liu is my mentor. Therefore, princess, please have some self-respect and stop pestering me. The marriage you really want to cut ties with me. Ji Wenying finally understood the severity of the situation. Tears rolling down, Xiao Yunheng neither dodged nor flinched. There shouldn't have been any connection to begin with, so how can there be talk of cutting ties? You are lying. Have you forgotten how you took me horseback riding at the hunting grounds, lifted me from the lake, and secretly sent medicine fearing I'd catch a cold? What were all those supposed to mean? Xiao Yunheng's figure stiffened. He didn't even dare to turn around and look at my expression. He only said, following the princess at the hunting grounds was because the princess deliberately made things difficult, and I had no choice but to go. Lifting the princess from the lake was purely to save someone, and had to be done. As for sending medicine, he turned his head away from Xiao Wenying's tear-filled eyes. I was merely worried that the Junzu might fall ill and blame me for it. Zi Wenying's figure swayed, and she couldn't help but take half a step back. Xiao Yunheng, how cruel of you! How cruel of you! She shouted loudly, stubbornly wiped away her tears, and was about to storm off with a flick of her sleeve. Too bad she didn't make it. Because I spoke up. Wait. My speaking up was beyond everyone's expectations. Xiao Yunheng nervously turned around and looked at me. Nianqing. What was he nervous about? Was he nervous about the wound on my face? Or was he nervous that I would keep pestering and give Xiao Wenying a taste of her own medicine? If that really was the case, then I can only say he really knew how to read people. Xi Wenying stopped in her tracks, glaring at me with hatred stubborn. What do you want to say now? Feeling smug. Aren't you? He actually took your side. Isn't it just because you are relying on those parents of yours at the border? Isn't it just because they've been stationed at the border for a bit longer? What is so great about that? At least you are not dead. But I slap a crisp slapping sound rang out. Her cheek instantly swelled red. But it wasn't over yet. Then came 3 more slaps in quick succession. All of them landed heavily on Xiao Wenying's face, with tremendous force. By the time anyone could react, it was already too late. Wenying? I was shoved hard by someone, but the person who pushed me didn't even spare me a glance, anxiously holding Xiao Wenying in his arms. Xiao Wenying sobbed uncontrollably. Ah Heng, it hurts so much. She actually hit me. Even my mother never bore to hit me. I might as well die. Then you'll all be satisfied. Saying that, she ran toward the pillar, putting on quite a show of fierce determination. Xiao Yunheng couldn't care about anything else anymore. He picked her up and was about to leave. Midway, as if remembering something, he paused and turned back. Brows slightly furrowed, he looked at me disapprovingly. Nianqing, you shouldn't have hit her. I've already reprimanded Wenying. Why must you keep pressing the matter? She has been spoiled since childhood and doesn't know better, but you are different. Hitting someone in public is improper and truly shouldn't have happened. After saying that, he carried Xiao Wenying away without looking back, completely oblivious. When his push sent me crashing into the edge of the table, how much pain I must have felt. Miss. The maidservant rushed forward anxiously. The gazes of those around me were either mocking or contemptuous. As if all saying see, just as expected, the consequence of overestimating oneself. Did she really think she could compete with the princess? But I don't care if that slap scattered most of my affection for Xiao Yunheng. Then Xiao Yunheng's push completely made my feelings for him vanish into thin air. I steadied myself and spoke. Immediately I want to see Imperial Grandmother. Emperor Uncle watched Xia Wenying grow up. Whether his guilt toward me could outweigh his favoritism for Xia Wenying, he couldn't guarantee. But Imperial Grandmother, the daughter she acknowledged from beginning to end, was only one. The granddaughter she acknowledged was naturally also only one. Since parting at the border, 2 years had passed. In the 3 months since I reunited with Xiao Yunheng, wind and rain pattered. Yet we walked toward different paths. He held Xi Wenying and turned away. I too got on the carriage and slowly entered the deep palace. When I saw that old lady smiling at me, calling me Nian Qing, my eyes completely welled up with tears. The pent-up grievances overflowed. I knelt before her crying and was held in her embrace. What happened? The old lady saw the red and swollen cheek, alarmed. I shed tears, gritting my teeth. I beg Imperial Grandmother, please annul my marriage with Xiao Yunheng. That Xiao Yunheng, I, Liu Nianqing, refuse to marry. Though I grew up at the border, me skin took after mother, exceptionally fair. So the red and swollen palm print was naturally very conspicuous. Besides, I am not the type to swallow insults silently. Grievances that should be aired naturally must be spoken clearly. My mother married far away to the border for the current emperor. My father guarded that bitter cold land for decades for the nation. Yet, I, the daughter of such meritorious subjects, was slapped in public right after the emperor grandly welcomed me back. What kind of reasoning is this? Sure enough, after I finished speaking, even someone as kind, looking as Imperial Grandmother, showed a hint of anger. Xi Wenying, that wretched girl again. I sensed something was off and asked, "Is there some hidden story behind this?" Imperial Grandmother let out a cold laugh. Only then did I learn that Xi Wenying's mother, Liang Shulan, was the white moonlight from the emperor's impoverished youth. Back then, the emperor was not favored, naturally not a popular candidate for the throne. So how could the Liang family possibly marry their daughter to him? Instead, they married her off to a young noble from a family backing another prince. I heard that before Liang Shulan married, she secretly passed a handkerchief to the emperor. It became an eternal regret in the emperor's heart. So much so that later, when the emperor ascended the throne, that young master from the noble family died unexpectedly. Yet Liang Shulan and her daughter weren't affected at all. On the contrary, one was granted the title of first-rank noble lady, and the other became Princess Minging. Publicly it was said that Liang Shulan had been close friends with the emperor's beloved elder sister, whom he missed dearly, and every time he saw her, the emperor would extend his affection to her as well. So he simply took her as his sworn sister, and he was also Xi Wenying's uncle. But how come I never knew that my mother had a close friend named Liang Shulan? Imperial Grandmother sighed. Back then, Xiao Yunheng declared to His Majesty that he had nothing to do with Xi Wenying anymore, looking like he had completely severed all ties with her. I thought he really didn't like that Xi Wenying. Plus His Majesty was afraid you'd overthink, so he forbade others from mentioning her in front of you. Who would have thought? He is also a fickle one. Disappointment flashed in the old lady's eyes, but I could only smile bitterly. He was far more than just fickle. He said he loathed her to the bone and wanted nothing to do with her. But when that woman slapped me, the first thing he worried about wasn't how badly I was hurt or how wronged I must have felt being humiliated like this in public for no reason. Instead, he was worried that once I came to my senses, I would slap that woman back, and how embarrassing that would be for her. I still remember to this day the cold look Xiao Yunheng gave me when he saw the wound on Xi Wenying's face. As if looking at an enemy, perhaps even he himself hadn't noticed. The last time he looked at someone with such eyes was the moment those soldiers damaged his late mother's sachet. I felt ice cold all over, only finding it ironic. How laughable that I still held onto a youthful promise, only to become a joke in the end. So Xiao Yunheng, with you being like this, what reason do I have to marry you? Seeing me cry silently, Imperial Grandmother's eyes flashed with heartache, and she held me in her arms. If you won't marry, then don't. What does that Xiao family even amount to? Without him, Xiao Yunheng, there are plenty of people eager to ask for this Empress Dowager's granddaughter's hand in marriage. She waved her hand grandly. By this Empress Dowager's decree, his marriage with you is hereby called off. Xiao Yunheng would never know that when he left while tenderly holding another woman. Those casual words of his, along with the friendship between him and me over the years, vanished into thin air that night. I left Imperial Grandmother's palace carrying an oral decree. Before leaving, she patted my hand in comfort. Your mother just sent word today. The border war has ceased, and she'll be back in just a few days. When the time comes to select a husband, we'll take our time choosing. I don't know if Imperial Uncle, the Emperor, will vent his anger for his white moonlight over the matter of Xiao Yunheng, but I know if my mother comes back and finds out that someone has been enjoying glory and wealth under her name, yet turned around and hit her daughter, then she'd definitely make that person pay for it. I am curious, too, when mother returns, facing her eldest sister who paved the way for her by going to the frontier, and a teary white moonlight who is already married. Who will my imperial uncle, the emperor, choose? But I didn't get to wait for mother to return. Instead, I first waited for Xiao Yunheng, who had gone and come back. He looked quite haggard. Seems like he spent a lot of effort and thought coaxing that woman he claimed to despise for being presumptuous. When he saw me, exhausted, Nianqing, can we discuss our marriage at a later date? But he regretted it as soon as he finished speaking. How strange, whenever we meet, it is never a good time. Like right now, rumors about two women fighting over a man and slapping each other at the Hundred Flowers Banquet spread. Like wildfire, Princess Minging even cried in front of the emperor. Even that lady Xia, who had always kept her distance from the emperor, also entered the palace. I heard the emperor dismissed everyone and reminisced with his old acquaintance for an hour. When she left, both Lady Xia and the emperor had reddened eyes, but the emperor didn't summon me right away, just like how I didn't go find him immediately after what happened that day. Imperial grandmother comforted me. If he is foolish enough to take it out on his own niece for an outsider, then don't blame this dowager for turning against him. But even so, I can feel these past few days the palace servant's attitude toward me has grown much colder. Otherwise, I wouldn't have gotten lost with no one to ask for directions and accidentally stumbled upon that little eunuch being bullied in the cold palace. The little eunuch looked no more than 12, yet his eyes were as fierce as a lone wolf. Those old eunuchs trampled him underfoot, stepping even the tassel he was staring at into the mud. They mocked. This must be what your foot-washing servant mother wove for you, right? Holding it every day, thinking it is some precious treasure, turns out it is not worth half a copper coin. What are you looking at? Really think you are somebody now? Nothing but a bastard thrown out by some rich family. Trash motherless thing. That is when Xiao Yunheng found me. Nianqing, I heard from the palace servants that you came this way. Then I spoke, Nianqing, our marriage. Can we discuss it some other day? Why did I regret it the moment I said it? Probably because it was too similar. Just like the first time we met. He was also being trampled like this. Only the tassel stepped into the mud was a sachet. Those people also mocked him as trash, a motherless stray dog. It was me, my mother, who saved him with our own hands. Xiao Yunheng looked as if struck by a blow, his eyes filled with remorse and guilt as he looked at me, wanting to explain, there is nothing between her and me. It is Wenying. She has a fierce temperament. The moment she heard about our marriage that day, she made a fuss about killing herself. Nianqing, you are the kindest, that is still a human life after all. You, I raised my hand, stopping his words. Under his gaze, I walked toward that wretched little eunuch, realizing that his eunuchs and I had long lost the arrogance from before. They knelt on the ground in terror, begging for mercy. The latter was thus released and lunged toward the tassel cord in the mud, but grasped at nothing. He raised his head and glared viciously at me, who had picked up the tassel cord, then froze, because I skillfully tied up the originally loose cord, completely unconcerned about the mud stains on it. I simply handed it to him, speaking gently. Since it is a keepsake from your late mother, you should take good care of it. The little eunuch clutched it preciously to his chest, his still childish voice resolute. I will. If anyone dares to damage it again next time, I'll make sure they die a horrible death. I suddenly found this amusing and laughed. What if it were a girl? Wouldn't you fall in love with her? Xiao Yunheng's figure stiffened. The little eunuch looked at me strangely, as if looking at a fool. This is my mother's keepsake. If anyone damaged it, I'd want to tear them to pieces. How could I possibly fall in love with them? At this point, Xiao Yunheng finally couldn't hold back, but flew into a rage from embarrassment. Nianqing, Wenying and I are innocent. She was just spoiled and inevitably became willful and made mistakes. It wasn't intentional. I only see her as a naive little sister. Why must you deliberately humiliate her and humiliate me even more? He stepped forward to grab my hand. Just like before. It is just that before, when he held my hand, it was to take me to see the romantic scenery. But now what he said was, let's stop fighting. Okay, why do you need to be jealous of a child? I just pulled my hand away from his, looked at him and said, But Xiao Yunheng, she is the same age as me. If she is a child, then what am I? How can that be the same? Xiao Yunheng blurted out almost immediately. Wenying grew up in the capital since childhood, never suffered much hardship, and had people protecting and pampering her. It is inevitable that she doesn't understand the ways of the world. But his words came to an abrupt halt. But I had already said it for him, while I was born at the distant frontier. Even as a general's daughter at the edge of the battlefield, no one would indulge or pamper a little girl, let alone have the time and patience to let a little girl fool around. Xiao Yunheng had been there. He knew military law was absolute, no exceptions for anyone. And I, or every child at the frontier, was taught from a young age to be sensible and obedient, and to never become a burden to others. We couldn't throw tantrums because our parents were already exhausted. We couldn't run around everywhere, because outside we could encounter barbarian spies at any time. And we especially couldn't make mistakes, because many of us no longer had parents. Those alive still had to kill enemies and defend the country. Those dead couldn't protect us or have our backs anymore. So how could we and Xia Wenying ever be the same? I looked at Xiao Yunheng, my eyes filled with disappointment and sorrow. He was stung. Nianqing, that is not what I meant. But clearly, he once said, no matter what Nianqing does, I will protect her. Whoever dares to hurt Nianqing, I will make them pay back 10-fold, 100-fold. Back then, the adults present all laughed together. Only the young man stood straight, utterly serious. A completely different person from the General Xiao who later stood in front of that woman, guarding against me as if I were some kind of monster, his eyes full of wariness. I suddenly felt an unprecedented exhaustion and spoke, Forget it. Forget it, Xiao Yunheng. Xiao Yunheng was stunned, but then heard me continue. Do whatever you want. I agree to everything. His sorrow turned to joy, really. I knew you've always been generous and kind-hearted. You would never fuss over such trivial matters. Since that is the case, let's wait until Wenying has come to terms with things before settling our marriage. We have plenty of time anyway. When the time comes, I will marry you with all the grandeur and glory. I will never let you suffer any grievance. His eyes were full of smiles, just like when he was young, but Xiao Yunheng, you've only been back in the capital for a few months, and you've already made me suffer every grievance there is. Whatever. Our marriage was called off long ago anyway. What is the point of me agreeing or not? The one he should be asking is his future wife, which isn't me anyway. I watched with disinterest as he turned to find Xia Wenying to share this good news. Before leaving, he said, At first, I also despised her willfulness refusing to eat anything but delicacies, tossing out brand new dresses just because she didn't like them, saying the emperor uncle would give her more anyway. Back then, I thought of you are also His Majesty's niece, yet you'd wear the same dress for years, never once complaining even about wild vegetable soup. So I always felt she couldn't compare to you in anything. But later I realized she was just spoiled. That is all. Those luxuries were hers from birth, not stolen or taken by force. Though she is a bit domineering and pampered, she is not bad at heart. There is misunderstanding between you two. At the mid-autumn banquet, I'll properly introduce you. Help you bury the hatchet. You'll definitely get along. I am afraid he'll be disappointed. At the mid-autumn banquet, Xiao Yunheng showed up with her face fully healed. She glared at me viciously. You hurt me and thought you could pretend nothing happened. Just wait. My uncle will definitely make you pay and get justice for me. I neither dodged nor flinched. Nianqing will be waiting to see. Like fire and water, utterly incompatible. Xiao Yunheng looked quite smug when she said that. She ran over to a noblewoman with a humph, clinging to her arm and acting spoiled. From the high seat, no one noticed the tender gaze the emperor cast at the two of them. The noblewoman was dressed in simple and elegant clothes, her face full of smiles, the pearls on her head dazzling, beautiful, and alluring. But no one knew what Xiao Yunheng had said to her. She turned back and swept a cool glance at me. I accepted it calmly. What a coincidence. By all rights, as the daughter of a meritorious minister who had returned, and as the emperor's niece, this banquet should have been arranged as my imperial grandmother had planned, sitting by her side, beneath the emperor, a singular honor, so that everyone would know my status was not something just anyone could trample on. But the space across from me that should have been empty suddenly had an extra seat added. It was precisely Xiao Yunheng's seat. Me imperial grandmother's smiling face froze when she saw this scene, and she looked at her son with displeasure. But the emperor didn't even glance sideways, as if everything was as it should be. Unsurprisingly, those court officials and noble ladies who were best at reading the situation whispered among themselves. I thought with the princess's daughter returning, Minging Junju would fall out of favor. After all, she is the emperor's real niece. But I didn't expect His Majesty to care for Minging Junju so much. This equals seating, isn't it? Telling everyone that even with the princess's daughter back, Minging Junju is still someone others cannot slight? Xiao Yunheng was afraid I would lose my temper over this, so he specially reminded me, it is just a seat, nothing more. Minging used to sit in your seat, and now she has already made a concession. We shouldn't be so petty about it. Who is we, with him? I turned a deaf ear. Amidst the clinking of glasses, the emperor slowly spoke. General Liu is a meritorious official who guards the border for me, and the Grand Princess is my elder sister from the same mother. Naturally, everyone should treat Nianqing with respect. But after all, the royal family has always been harmonious. Now that a rift has suddenly appeared, Nianqing, under the beautiful woman's gentle gaze, he looked at me. Don't you have anything to say? As his words fell, the whole hall went silent. Imperial grandmother was the first to understand what he meant by those words. She looked at her own son in disbelief, as if seeing him for the first time. Indeed, she could accept her son being biased and letting Xiao Yunheng be on equal footing with me, but she never expected that her son would be so biased as to demand I apologize to Xiao Yunheng in front of everyone. I calmed down Imperial grandmother, who was about to speak, stood up and said, "This subject has nothing to say." The emperor's expression darkened. Xiao Yunheng couldn't hold back anymore and jumped out, shouting angrily, "How dare you slap this princess and still act so self-righteous?" I sneered coldly. Wasn't it the princess who struck first? Yinger was indeed reckless and rude, impulsively hurting Miss Liu, but it was just a slap. Miss Liu could have simply returned it, so why give 3 extra slaps? A soft, weak voice spoke up. Liang Shulan looked at me with tears in her eyes, just like any mother who protects her daughter after being bullied. Yinger lost her father when she was young. We've survived as a widow and orphan until now. Nothing compared to Miss Liu's prestigious family background. But if Miss Liu is angry, she can slap me instead. Shulan will take any beating or scolding. Why must she lay hands on the ignorant Yunheng? She sobbed continuously, like a pear blossom bathed in rain. Xiao Yunheng became anxious. "Mother, what did you do wrong?" She is clearly the shameless one, seducing other people's men, and still thinking about that bullshit merit to demand repayment. So what if they guarded the border for 20 years? Uncle is the emperor. They have to do whatever he tells them to do. What right do they have to claim credit? Liang Shulan held Xie Wenying back and shook her head. Yinger stopped talking. The Liu family are meritorious officials of the court. Even His Majesty has to show them respect. It is only natural for Miss Liu to be willful. As soon as these words came out, the emperor, whose eyes were already full of heartache, felt another surge of anger. After all, under heaven, which emperor doesn't fear subjects whose merits overshadow the ruler? My father has received widespread praise over the years. It would be a lie to say he doesn't care. Nian Qing, kneel down now. He didn't even hesitate, coldly shouting at me. Elder sister has always been gentle and graceful. When did she raise such a vicious daughter like you? Hurry up and apologize to the lady of Shuo and the Junzu. I remained cold-eyed. This subject's daughter has committed no crime. Why should I apologize? It was His Majesty and the Empress Dowager who intended to arrange this marriage. It was General Xiao himself who nodded in agreement, and it was the Junzu herself who barged into the banquet and struck first. So why should Nianqing apologize? My gaze swept coldly over the smug Xie Wenying and the sobbing Liang Shulan covering her face, and I continued. On what grounds? Insolent. On the grounds that I am the Son of Heaven, setting aside whether you are at fault in this matter, even if you weren't. What I say is right, is right. What I say is wrong, is wrong. Do you dare disobey? That long-hidden suspicion grew wildly as he looked down at me with narrowed eyes. Or is this the manner you learned at the border, having only your father in your eyes and not your sovereign? When the Son of Heaven was enraged, no one dared to speak, let alone that a poor answer could be the grave crime of defiance. Yet I confronted him without yielding an inch. Between blood relatives, similar brows and eyes held not a shred of warmth. Liang Shulan held her handkerchief, wiping her tears as she spoke delicately. Miss Liu is of noble status with a proud temperament. If she won't apologize, Shulan certainly wouldn't dare do anything about it. But Miss Liu just said she did nothing wrong. Forgive Shulan for speaking bluntly. Yinger hitting someone was wrong. But Miss Liu could have hit back or asked His Majesty to seek justice. Why did she have to add 3 more slaps? Could it be that Miss Liu wants to deny this as well? You should know that at the banquet it wasn't just you alone. Others saw it too. Isn't that right, General Xiao? She looked down below. Xiao Yunheng sat in his seat, face grim without saying a word. It was Xiao Wenying who gradually grew anxious. She said to him, "When you coaxed me while applying medicine that day, you said you would protect me from now on." Xiao Yunheng, "If you lied to me, I'll go find a pillar and smash my head against it." Her temperament had always been like this. If things didn't go her way, she'd cry, throw a fit, and threaten to hang herself. Xiao Yunheng once told me that she would actually do it, so he could only indulge her. I just asked if it was possible that the reason she would actually do it was because someone would always stop her, and she knew she wouldn't actually get hurt. Xiao Yunheng was stunned at my words, but quickly dismissed it. How could you think of Wenying like that? No matter how immature she is, she wouldn't joke around with her own life. So this time, Xie Wenying really was going to ram into the pillar. Liang Shulan cried while trying to stop her, and the scene became a chaotic mess. Finally, enough. I quietly watched as veins bulged on the back of Xiao Yunheng's hand. He abruptly raised his head, not daring to meet my gaze. I knew he would explain himself again afterward. I explained that this was just to save Xie Wenying's life. And besides, I'd have everything once I returned to the capital. Xie Wenying has lost her uncle and imperial grandmother now, so I should yield to her a bit. So he stepped forward, knelt down without daring to meet my eyes, and spoke with difficulty. That day, the princess was indeed at fault first. But I had already reprimanded and mediated, and the matter should have ended there. I didn't expect Miss Liu to suddenly attack, so regarding this matter, I stared at the ground and heard his trembling voice. Miss Liu is also at fault. I suddenly felt like laughing. Even though I had already given up hope hearing those words, I found that I could still feel sorrow. In my ears, my imperial uncle, the emperor angrily accused. "What do you have to say for yourself now? Hurry up and admit your mistake. I think you've stayed at the border too long and have forgotten your place." Across from me, Xiao Yunheng broke into a smile through her tears, raised her chin, and said loudly, "Wenying doesn't want her to apologize. Wenying wants to slap her back. However she hit this princess before, this princess will pay her back double." Xiao Yunheng, who had his head lowered, didn't expect Xiao Wenying to make such a demand and looked up in shock. "Princess?" No one objected. My imperial uncle, the emperor, didn't either. That meant tacit approval. Was this to teach me a lesson? Or to slap the face of the Liu family army thousands of miles away, as a show of force Xi Wenying walked over triumphantly and raised her hand. Imperial grandmother let out a sigh. He smiled and looked at the person standing across from me, who had been watching for who knows how long, and spoke. "Look, mother, this is how they treat us." The reigning grand princess stood at the doorway, dressed in fitted attire, travel-worn and dusty, once a pampered noble daughter, raised like a precious flower, now weathered by the winds and frost of the borderlands, bearing a few more marks of hardship. She had ridden hard all the way, to see her daughter sooner. Even more eager to return home, and to see relatives she hadn't seen in decades. But what she rushed here to see was the younger brother she had once supported with her own hands, letting her niece be slapped in front of everyone, all for another woman, another person's daughter, the son of an old friend she had sheltered out of kindness, had become the witness accusing her own daughter of crimes. Clang. Liang Shulan instantly stopped crying. The emperor stood up in a panic. The wine cup fell to the ground, his voice trembling. "Elder sister." She walked forward step by step, covered in the dust and mud from her journey, her gaze ice-cold and piercing. Having hastily helped her husband deal with the border warfare, there were still dried beads of blood on the edges of her shoes. "So you are that whatever, grand princess." Only Xiao Wenying, fearless in her ignorance, said to mother, "You came at just the right time. Your daughter dared to hit me. Now I am going to hit her back right in front of you. Wenying, stop talking." Xiao Yunheng snapped back to his senses and spoke up quickly. But it was too late. Xi Wenying had already been kicked to the ground. She curled up in pain and cried out, "Uncle, Wenying hurts so much. This woman actually dared to hit Wenying." In the past, whenever she cried like this, her imperial uncle would stand up for her, and even I was no exception to being punished. But this time, no matter how she cried, her imperial uncle just stood frozen in place, not uttering a single word. Mother held me protectively in her arms, looked at the high and mighty Son of Heaven, and said, "Wenye, is this what you promised your imperial sister in your letters, that you would help take good care of her daughter?" Wenye was the emperor's name. They were born of the same mother, the closest of kin. Since childhood, he had feared and respected his imperial sister. Not to mention during the most intense period of the succession struggle. His imperial sister had risked her life countless times to save him. His arrogance deflated by more than half, and he tried to explain himself to the elder sister he hadn't seen in years. "Imperial sister, it is not what you think." It was Nianqing, who, before he could finish, I was already leaning on Mother's shoulder with reddened eyes. "Mother, you are a liar. Uncle already has another niece. He doesn't love Nianqing anymore." As she said this, tears fell. The emperor crying, who can't do that. Just now it was all of you crying. Now it is my turn. My mother already felt extremely guilty about me being born at the border amidst turmoil. Now seeing me being tormented like this, how could she not be angry? Yet Liang Shulan still wanted to pull the same trick, throwing herself at my mother's feet, crying pitifully, "Please calm your anger, princess. All the wrongs are this humble wife's fault. Please don't be angry at His Majesty. If you want to beat or punish anyone, just take it out on me. Yinger is innocent." Y'all right then. My mother didn't hesitate for even a moment. With just a shriek from her, she had already been kicked to lie together with her own daughter. She was trampled under my mother's foot. Seeing his white moonlight like this, the emperor was moved, elder sister, but it only added fuel to the fire. Shut up, the daughter I gave birth to after all that hardship. Your own niece forget that you don't cherish her, but you actually bully her together with outsiders. Wonye, try protecting this slut again. Him, the authority of his imperial sister from their youth still remained, along with years of guilt. It left even the emperor speechless. Liang Shulan's chin was lifted by the tip of my mother's shoe, her voice cold. I heard you use the title of being this princess's close friend from my maiden days, and Wenye took you in as his sworn sister, even granting you mother and daughter first-rank noble titles and a Junzu title. Now, you've even gone so far as to bully this princess's daughter. Liang Shulan, have I been too lenient with you? Princess. Liang Shulan was too frightened to speak. After all, this was a royal banquet. Even if one wanted to deal with someone, it wasn't proper to do so in public like this. Imperial grandmother finally spoke. Take her away for now. Liang Shulan was taken away by the mamas from the Empress Dowager's palace, along with Xiao Yunheng. As she was being taken away, she was still shouting, "What are you doing? I am a princess personally conferred by His Majesty. My mother is a first-rank titled lady. Let go of me. Imperial uncle, Xiao Yunheng, brother Yunheng, save me." After a long separation, everyone had a lot to say. But mother didn't seem to want to listen to anyone. She shielded me and was about to leave. Xiao Yunheng softened again. He tugged at my hem, speaking to my mother, and to me, godmother Nianqing, whinnying she. He was slapped hard across the face, his cheek instantly turning red. Me mother's eyes were full of disappointment, Xiao Yunheng. How could I have been so blind as to want to betroth my daughter to you? As soon as these words came out, the thought of pleading for Xia Wenying instantly vanished. Xiao Yunheng had an ominous premonition and held on to me, unwilling to let go. Nianqing, what does this mean? What else could it mean, naturally? It meant exactly what it said. My mother sneered. You are still pleading for her even now. Do you really think you are something good? Colluding with outsiders to slander my daughter. Guards, take her away too. But Xiao Yunheng seemed to hear nothing, stubbornly looking at me and said, Nianqing, what did you mean by what you said just now? We will get married. Are foster mother and you angry with me? This matter is indeed my fault. I thought she just wanted you to lower your head. I didn't expect she would lay hands on you. Nianqing, our marriage. I pulled his hand away. Marriage. What marriage between us? He stared at me intensely. The marriage granted by His Majesty and the Empress Dowager. Have you forgotten? Behind me, Imperial Grandmother spoke up. That marriage, right after you left Nianqing behind with Xia Wenying that day. Nianqing immediately came to me and had it annulled. General Xiao, there is no marriage between you. My granddaughter cannot possibly marry you. Xiao Yunheng stood there stunned. Just like when we first met, I smiled at him and said, Did you hear that, Xiao Yunheng? I am not marrying you. If saving you that time was a mistake, then let everything go back to the way it was. The eldest young master of the Xiao family offended the princess, behaved improperly before the emperor, and was thrown into the imperial prison. He became that abandoned child again. The father and stepmother, who were just respectful to him a second ago, immediately distanced themselves, terrified of being implicated. How laughable, really. Xiao Yunheng was sent to the frontier military camp for training because of these two people narrowly escaping death. Even his mother's serious illness and death were likely related to these two, but as soon as he returned, he was moved by his father's few tears and words of repentance. He immediately empathized and became one heart with his father. It shows that Xiao Yunheng is truly magnanimous, always liking to forgive those who hurt him. Unlike me, I only hold grudges. After that mid-autumn banquet, that grand princess who married into the Liu family and went to the frontier for decades had returned. On the first day back, she publicly kicked the first-rank noble lady and the Junzu and slapped the young general of the Xiao family who held a third-rank official position. In a trance, it reminded some old ministers of many years ago. This princess had been just as swift and decisive when she supported the young emperor to the throne. Now that Lady Shuo and Junju Minging had bullied her daughter while she was away, How could they get off easy perhaps knowing this? So these days, me emperor uncle has been frequently showing goodwill and coming to see me. He seemed to have returned to how he was when he first met me, speaking gently with concern. Nian Qing, uncle is sorry for all the things in the past. Now uncle has rewarded you with many things, all the most fashionable among noble ladies in the capital. I will absolutely not let you be mocked by others again. No, as my niece, you should naturally be granted the title of Junju. Let's see who dares to look down on you. He waved his hand grandly. I looked at those pearl hairpins and precious jade, and that imperial edict bestowing me the title of Junju. Looking at this man before me, who should have been my uncle, I said self-mockingly, "So uncle knew all along." Knew that my dresses were mocked by other noble ladies as old-fashioned, and if not for imperial grandmother later getting me new ones, I would have continued being ridiculed. Knew that, although I was his niece, I wasn't even a Junju like Xiao Yunheng. Everyone else saw her bully me and followed along without restraint. He knew all of this, yet he never thought to give these to me before. The emperor's face showed some embarrassment, and he sighed. Don't look at how domineering Wenying acts in front of others, but actually she is the most timid. She was just afraid that once you came, I wouldn't dote on her anymore, and Xiao Yunheng wouldn't pay attention to her either. She cried and made a fuss about jumping into the lake. I had no choice but to placate her first. Nian Qing, you are so sensible, surely you can understand your uncle, right? He looked at me expectantly. Of course I understand. He was overjoyed. Then go talk to your mother about Wenying and Shulan. I didn't accept those things, including that imperial edict. I raised my eyes and said with a faint smile under his relieved expression, "After all, there is a difference between close and distant relations. No matter how close Nian Qing is, I am just uncle's niece. How could I ever compare to your own daughter?" The emperor's expression suddenly froze. Shocked. You knew all along. I guessed it when imperial grandmother told me about Shi Wenying's past. After all, no matter how magnanimous a man is, he couldn't possibly be that good to someone else's child, let alone the child of the man who stole his wife. The imagined embarrassment and awkwardness of being exposed didn't exist. On the contrary, the emperor was more enraged by the humiliation of being toyed with. He barged into imperial grandmother's palace and argued with mother and imperial grandmother. From childhood till now, you've always had to outdo me in everything, and mother always loved you the most. But don't forget, I am now the emperor. I respected you as my imperial sister, acknowledging your merit in helping me ascend the throne. But you knew Wenying was my child, and still kept her detained. Whoa, Wenyue, from beginning to end, have you ever had any respect for imperial authority in your eyes? Years of accumulated resentment exploded, even though the gratitude for being saved by his imperial sister many times, and her marrying down to pave the way for him still remained. But what also remained was the indignation of always being overshadowed and not being treated with proper reverence. Imperial grandmother trembled with anger. What nonsense are you spouting? She is your own sister. Could it be that for the sake of a troublemaker you've spoiled, you'd turn against your sister? Don't forget how much your sister suffered for you, narrowly escaping death countless times, and even went to the frontier for years. I've long wanted to ask. The emperor shouted hoarsely, all these years, no matter how hard I tried, no matter how much I strived, all I ever heard from you people was sighing about how great it would be if she were a man. But where am I worse than her? She did me a favor, and when have I not shown her extra respect? But what about her? Back then, she secretly hid the news of Shulan's marriage from me, and now she relies on the Liu family's military power and doesn't even take me seriously. He pointed at mother. Huo Wenyue, if you don't hand over Shulan and Wenying today, don't blame me for being ruthless. Mother quietly looked at him. In the end, just one sentence. So this is how you see me. The emperor fell silent, turned his face away, paused for 2 seconds, then flung his sleeves and left. It wasn't that he didn't want to take them by force, but aside from Xiao Yunheng being detained in the imperial prison, Xi Wenying and Liang Shulan were being held by the imperial grandmother. He couldn't release them, so he was prepared to tear off all pretenses, but could only bring out Xiao Yunheng first that day. All the court officials saw the emperor's gloomy face. The Empress Dowager and the Grand Princess were holding the people and wouldn't let go, insisting he make a choice. These were Mother's exact words. All these years for Liang Shulan and Shi Wenying, you've given them supreme honor, even when they beat the tenant farmers on the estate to death, killed the commoners who stood in their way, you still protected them. The gold, silver, and jewels in the national treasury, the hard-earned wealth of the people, you pour them in like water, or look down on them and let them break or get lost, or dislike them and buy them off or give them away. You don't even care. Wenyai, these two should be punished according to their crimes. If you insist on protecting them, then you'll have to run over your imperial sister first. The emperor sneered coldly. What gives you the right to threaten me? The royal family's domestic affairs were about to turn into state affairs. A storm was brewing. Xiao Yunheng was the first to come find me. Surprisingly, it wasn't to ask about Xia Wenying's safety. He had been released from the imperial prison by the emperor and entrusted with important duties. Quite a dramatic turn of fortune, riding high on success, but he didn't look very happy. Instead, he seemed much more weathered. Nianqing. He blocked my path and spoke. During those days in the imperial prison, I thought very carefully about many things. Only then did I understand how despicable what I did back then was. No matter how spoiled Xi Wenying was, or how she threatened to kill herself, what did that have to do with me? Given her status, someone would always look after her anyway. On the contrary, you had just arrived, all alone. I should have stood by your side so that others wouldn't dare bully you. But he was numb yet remorseful. I regret it. In Nianqing, I truly regret it. After getting out of the imperial prison, I stopped believing what my father said. I hardened my heart and submitted a memorial against him to His Majesty. He, my stepmother, and those bastards were exiled 1,000 miles away yesterday. I grew tired of listening and cut him off. I wonder what General Xiao means by telling me all this. He immediately raised his head to look at me. I want to marry you, Nianqing. We were meant to be husband and wife, acquainted since youth, childhood sweethearts. If none of this had happened, perhaps we truly were meant to be husband and wife. But Xiao Yunheng, from the moment you abandoned me to be mocked by others while you left with another woman, there was no longer any meeting to be between us. I said calmly, you knew full well you had feelings for Xia Wenying, yet couldn't let go of your old attachment to me. You hid Xia Wenying's existence from me, and let her act so brazenly around you. Xiao Yunheng, what makes you think that I, Liu Nianqing, should spend my long life married to a husband like you? With every word I spoke, Xiao Yunheng's face grew a shade paler. In the end, he smiled bitterly. After all, I was blind. But Nianqing, if the sachet can be mended, why can't we reconcile as before? Watching you marry another man, I can't do it. With that last sentence, his eyes turned dark and menacing. If he hadn't mentioned the sachet, it would have been fine. But now that he did, I pointed mockingly at the patched-up thing at his waist. I, Liu Nianqing, don't want such tattered junk. Normally, if anyone dared to be so disrespectful to his late mother's keepsake, he would surely turn hostile without mercy. But now his expression only darkened for a moment, and as I brushed past him, he finally spoke. His Majesty has long been wary of the Liu family, and the Grand Princess openly opposes him, hiding the Lady of Shuo and the young lady. Given His Majesty's fondness for the Lady of Shuo, it won't be long before he can't help but resort to force. He closed his eyes briefly. Godmother refuses to see me now, so I can only inform you don't bring trouble upon yourself. Ultimately, they brought about their own destruction. I didn't pause. My mother doesn't need you to criticize how she does things. As if my mother was groveling and bowing, as if the resentment bottled up in the emperor's heart would just dissipate. Moreover, the Grand Princess has been just and fair all her life. When treacherous ministers appear by the emperor's side, naturally there is a need to purge the court of evil. The next time I saw Xia Wenying, she and Liang Shulan had already been attended to by imperial grandmother using the methods for dealing with harem consorts. At first they were still shouting, How dare you? His Majesty won't let you off. I want to see His Majesty. I want to see His Majesty. Brother Yunheng, save me. Ji Wenying was the first to break. Liang Shulan still cared for her daughter, and seeing this, she begged me for mercy. Miss Liu, we were wrong. We shouldn't have deliberately made things difficult for you. I'll kowtow and apologize to you on Wenying's behalf. Stop hitting, stop hitting. She looked at Mother pitifully. I beg your highness the princess to show mercy and spare Shulan and my daughter's lives. This princess has already spared you once. Liang Shulan was stunned. Mother's expression remained unchanged. Back when you married into the Xia family, you secretly passed a handkerchief to Wenye to have him receive the bride, but in truth, you had colluded with the fourth prince to ambush and kill him the moment he arrived. At that time, this princess thought you had no choice, so I didn't pursue it and spared you once, but I never expected that after all these years, you would still be so insatiably greedy. Since Wenye, being the emperor, cannot bring himself to act, then I, as the Grand Princess, shall naturally eliminate this scourge for our great Yang. Scourge, with her disguise exposed. Liang Shulan simply stopped pretending and suddenly burst into laughter. I am the scourge. Wasn't it Huo Wenye who indulged all this? Why is it always my fault in the end? What, did I enjoy the people's blood and sweat all by myself? Did I bend the law for personal gain and harbor criminals all by myself? Huo Wenye, what a hypocritical heart you have. You can't bring yourself to act against your own brother, so you use me to put on this act of righteousness. She knew there was no room for negotiation anymore, so she let herself speak freely. But she didn't notice Mother standing in the shadows with a sword, speaking eerily indeed, in the end, a hopeless fool. Liang Shulan trembled all over upon hearing this. Thinking of something, she looked at Mother in terror. What are you going to do? It was also at this moment that I saw figures moving chaotically outside the door and spoke. Mother, everyone's here. Shuan Palace had been surrounded. The Emperor of Deyong flew into a rage for a beauty, not hesitating to resort to force and break with his closest kin. He simply said, Shulan is different from everyone else to me. No matter what my status is, she has always loved me for who I am. Leading them was Xiao Yunheng. This formation had already far exceeded what was needed just to snatch someone. It looked more like controlling hostages. When Liang Shulan saw the emperor, she was ecstatic. Your Majesty, save me, save our Yinger. Ji Wenying, who had been in despair, also came back to life. This time she no longer held back. Brother Yunheng, you finally arrived. Quickly, kill them. They dared to torture me. She was used to being willful. Anyone who crossed her before ended up like this. So much so that she didn't notice when she said those words. The emperor paid her no attention, and Xiao Yunheng's gaze toward her carried killing intent. Imperial sister, when you married into the Liu family back then and had the Liu family support me to this position, that was a great merit. By now it is time for you to retire after your success. The Liu family's merits overshadow the ruler, and they've been hoarding military power. I have already sent a large force to arrest Liyue. Hereafter the Liu family will be raided and exterminated, but rest assured you are still my imperial sister, the Grand Princess of Deyong. I will also grant Nianqing the title of County Princess. You can just enjoy your blessings in the capital from now on, no more fighting and killing. He looked at Mother and smugly announced his arrangements, having been told that starting today, he has truly and completely surpassed Mother. Even Xiao Yunheng tried to persuade me before making his move. Nianqing, His Majesty said that after this matter is done, he'll grant us marriage. We can still be together. Ji Wenying's rising smile froze, and she looked at those two men with tears in her eyes. Brother Yunheng, how could you do this to me? The emperor reassured her. If you truly like him, you can be the principal wife, and she can be the equal wife. I don't want that. I want her to be a concubine. She is only fit to carry my shoes. Father and daughter fantasized about the future. Then they watched as Xiao Yunheng was pierced through the arm by a sword and snapped back to reality. Who dares to assassinate? The emperor was greatly alarmed. A rough voice rang out. boots stepping on Xiao Yunheng's body. I'd like to know too. I, Liue, have been loyal to the crown and defended the nation my whole life, who still wants to harm my wife and child. Foster Xiao Yunheng spat out a mouthful of blood. Father, Lu Yue, whoa. Wanye couldn't believe it, as if seeing a ghost. How can you be here? You should be at the border. As he said this, a drop of cold sweat trickled down. Imperial sister. Mother's sword was already at his neck. Her expression was cold. That night, when she returned, she sat motionless until dawn, and finally made her last decision. Since he is a hopeless case that can't be helped, since he is an ungrateful wretch, then, Imperial brother, it is time for you to abdicate as well. She had the ability to suppress all the court officials and support him onto that throne. Naturally, she could also pull him down. During the palace coup, Liang Shulan died at the very beginning. Shi Wenying was still calling out Xiao Yunheng's name the moment before she was captured. And Xiao Yunheng. Xiao Yunheng was beaten to the ground by father like a dead dog. Until the very end, he still tried to grab the hem of my clothes, Nianqing. My reaction was extreme. I ordered, "What are you standing there for? Hurry up and root out the problem completely." The next second he breathed his last. In his final moment, one could still hear the son of heaven's impotent rage and despair. "You can't dethrone me. Huo Wenyue, I am the imperial prince, the son of heaven of great Yang. Without me, who else in the Huo family can succeed the throne? You can't, you can't." The smell of blood slowly spread. I walked through the bloodstains to the Buddhist hall in Xuan Palace that had been closed all night, pushed open the door, and said softly, "Grandmother, it is all over." The unhurried sound of the wooden fish stopped. A long sigh came from within. The palace attendant beside me spoke to me respectfully, Princess. "Everything has ended, yet it is also a beginning.